Hi, everybody. I think this has started recording now, so I'm going to say hello. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you tonight from the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to anyone any First Nations peoples who might be joining us this evening. So I'm just waiting for people to start joining. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to talk to you about my psychological thriller Dark Mode, which was such a joy to write and has been such a huge joy to have out in the world. Welcome. Thank you for saying hi. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Wendy. I wrote this book for a very particular readership. This is my third book that's been published, but it's actually the seventh book that I wrote. So I have 4 books that I wrote that were not published when I was learning to become a writer. And I mean, to be fair, I started the first one when I was 14. So the odds of that one getting published were not very good. But this book, when I decided it was going to be a crime book and I decided it was going to be a psychological thriller, I picked a few authors that I love and a few of their books that I like. When a book, you start reading it and just within a few chapters, you're just like, I can't stop reading this book. I have to see what happens. And it's like hooked itself into you. I wanted to create that feeling. And so what I did was I looked at other authors who had done that for me. And those authors were Candace Fox, particularly her solo stuff that she, I know she co-writes with James Patterson, and I've read a lot of those books as well, but I love her solo stuff, like Crimson Lake. So Candace Fox, Tana French, especially In the Woods and The Witch Elm. The Witch Elm is one of my all-time favorite books. And J.P. Pomeroy's early work, So Call Me Evie and In the Clearing. And of course, classics like Gone Girl. I was like, okay, how do I create a book that hooks readers, early on and makes them want to just get to the end. And so I really studied that craft, and it's been so rewarding seeing readers respond to the book. That's been the book's only been out a couple of weeks, but it's been really amazing. The readers, I'm getting messages every day from people saying I read your book in 2 days, I couldn't put it down, or I picked your book up at 3 p.m. and now it's 11 and I'm trying to finish it before I go to bed. So it's been really, really exciting. So I want to say thank you to everyone who has read the book so far and who's been sharing about it online and commenting. It's just been really, really, really exciting. So please let me know if you have any questions. I'm really, really happy to answer any questions that you have, or let me know if you've read the book or if you haven't read it yet. I won't give any spoilers, so don't worry about that. But yeah, if you've read the book and you have questions that aren't spoilers, let me know. Because some of the reviews, there's been a few reviews that I'm like, wow, that's a lot of spoilers in that review. And there's a lot of stuff in the book, but yeah, some of them have had a few spoilers. So I'll tell you a bit about my inspirations for writing Dark Mode. The first one was, obviously, I decided that I was going to write a crime book. So I've written 2 previous books that were nonfiction. The first one dealt with the Armenian genocide and its historical connections to Australia. So, hi, Julie, thank you. And hi, Sally. Thank you so much, Julie, for saying that. That's really exciting. So yeah, after I spent 10 years studying the Armenian genocide, and genocide is referred to as the crime of crimes. So I feel like I've been in a crime space, for a long time. And one of the reasons genocide became an actual crime with legislation around it is because there was a lawyer. He happened to be a Polish Jewish lawyer, who learned about the Armenian genocide as it was happening. Of course, it wasn't called that at the time. And he went to his law professor and he said, why is it illegal for one person to kill another, but it's not illegal for a government to kill an entire section of its population. And so he was the person that really pushed legislation around genocide and he created the word genocide, which I think is such an incredible gift to humanity. So yeah, I obviously could talk about the Armenian genocide for 10 hours, but I'm going to talk about dark mode. But that's just to say that I've been, in the crime space for a long time. Now Sharon has asked, how did you choose your characters' names? Oh, Sharon, I love that question. Thank you. I really find it, when I open a book and all the names are like really common names, like Tom and Sally and Mary and Ashley, I just can't keep the characters straight. So I went out of my way to find names that are a little more unusual. And I know Reagan's not a super unusual name, but I don't feel like it's a super common name either. So what I do is Google thinks that I'm pregnant because I'm always on baby name websites. So I go through baby name websites and I make lists of like the names that I like. And I'm like, oh, like there's a name that like I don't hear all the time and that, sounds fun. So yeah, I spend a lot of time on the baby name websites. So that's my hot tip if you're writing. Ilona, I hope I said your name right. Thank you for saying you look forward to reading the book. So in terms of inspirations, yeah, one was crime. And like I said, I've been in the crime space for a long time, but I think what made me decide that I was ready to write a psychological thriller and to actually like write a proper crime book was that I got diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome in 2017. And I was very, very sick, and sort of my entire life sort of shut down. I like couldn't do anything. I was basically bedbound for a couple of years. And I got through that time by listening to true crime podcasts. Like that was really the key thing that helped me get through that time in my life, when I was so sick I couldn't do anything else. And there was a lot of days where I was so sick, like I couldn't even listen to the podcast because I couldn't follow the narrative. When the cognitive fatigue was really bad, I would hear words and I would understand the meaning of each word, but I couldn't put them together into a sentence that had meaning. And so then I would realize that I was too sick even to listen to a podcast. But probably about half the time I was able to listen to podcasts. And so I listened to literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of true crime podcasts. I also watched every single episode of Law & Order Special Victims Unit in order when I was sick. So I did that, watched a lot of true crime documentaries on Netflix as well. So after a couple of years of that, and by then I was getting well enough that I could be writing, often an hour a day, maybe. So I was like starting to rebuild my practice. Hi, Jessica, thanks for joining. So I started to rebuild my practice, and yeah, I was decided that I was going to try writing this crime book because I'd always loved them. I grew up reading Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. And one of the most exciting things when I was a kid was when I got the Nancy Drew Hardy Boys crossover, because clearly those characters lived in the same world, right? Like we all knew they lived in the same world and they had to know each other. So when they finally met, that was just one of the most satisfying moments of my childhood. And then John Grisham, when John Grisham was huge, like when the Pelican Brief and the Firm and everything were out, was when I was a teenager. So that's, those were the first like adult novels that I really started getting into and really started loving. So that's why I started with crime. And then specifically this story, there's a twist that comes, there's a certain point where something happens and it's a particular twist. And, I've read a lot of crime books, watched a lot of crime films and TV shows. And I thought, I've never seen that particular thing happen. Like, I've never seen that thing happen. And so I thought, when I started conceiving of dark mode, it was sort of from that one moment. I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's going to be too much of a giveaway. But if you've read the book, you might recognize there's a point where the main character, Reagan, she goes and she knocks on a door. And someone answers that she's not expecting. And that's the moment that I sort of started from that, and I built the book out from there because I wanted to see if I could make that moment work. And I was really excited about that. So that was another one of the inspirations. Was just, yeah, starting from one of the twists. Thank you so much for commenting on the cover. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, Samia, I won't give anything away. But if you have questions, you can please pop them in the chat. I'm really, really happy to answer questions. Thank you, Jessica. I'm really so thankful for everyone who has been reading the book and who has been leaving positive reviews online. Like, the response has just been amazing. Like, I walked into some bookshops when we were going around doing signings, and some of the booksellers would come up and hug me because they were so excited about the book, and I was just like, this is really, really amazing. So yeah, thank you for all your enthusiasm, everyone. So another one of my inspirations for the book was the murder of Elizabeth Short, who is known as the Black Dahlia. Now, if you follow true crime, if you're an avid true crime person, you've probably heard of the Black Dahlia. And even if you're not an avid true crime person, you might have heard of the Black Dahlia, because this case, this is a true case, happened in Los Angeles in 1947, and it just happened to the public's imagination. Like, people became obsessed with this woman's murder. And it is still technically unsolved today and will probably remain so at this stage. But so many people have written books about, who they think murdered the Black Dahlia. There are two separate people who wrote books claiming their father was the murderer, and it's not the same man. It's like two different fathers. So I, when I was in my true crime binge era of my life, I came across something that referenced the Black Dahlia and said it was the most infamous unsolved murder in the US. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, why haven't I heard of it? So I found this podcast about it called Root of Evil. And oh my gosh, if you like true crime podcasts, Root of Evil is one you should definitely check out. So I got into reading about the Black Dahlia, and I think there's a very specific reason why I chose to engage with her narrative in this book, which is because I think there's one theory about why she was murdered that is connected to violence against women, and it's just one of the most extreme examples I've ever heard in terms of the attitude towards women, in terms of how certain types of men think about women. And I think that in turn is connected to the attitudes that we're seeing online now. And that was one of the things I really wanted to explore in Dark Mode. So Belinda, thank you so much for your question. Belinda asked, what would be your elevator pitch to sell your book? So my elevator pitch for Dark Mode is a psychological thriller with a dark web plot. And it is set over a sweltering Sydney summer. It follows the main character, whose name is Reagan Carson, and she is running this business. Now, her business is, unfortunately, she's not very good at the business side of things. So her business is really struggling financially. But what she is good at is growing interesting and unique and bizarre plants. And so she runs this boutique garden center. And she's very good with plants because she has a lot of trust issues when it comes to people, and she has trust issues for good reasons. In chapter 1, she goes out for a morning run, and near her home, she finds the body of a woman who has clearly been murdered. And if you know how the Black Dahlia was posed when her body was left in the street, she was cut in half at the waist and put in this very specific position with her arms up. And so this woman, she's very clearly been murdered. She's been cut in half at the waist. And Reagan, as soon as she sees this woman, she's freaked out, obviously because of the murder, but she's also freaked out because this woman looks just like her. And Reagan becomes very afraid that her past is catching up with her. So that's my elevator pitch for the book. Belinda says you have brought me back to dark crime books. Oh, well, that's very exciting to hear. Thank you. That's really exciting. I don't think of the book as that dark. I don't think of it as that dark because we don't see the murders happen. Like, yes, there's this quite intense scene in the first chapter where Reagan finds this body, and I describe what happened to the woman, which is a recreation of what really happened to the Black Dahlia. But we learn that, you know, everything that happened to her happened after she died. So the Black Dahlia was killed by blows to the head, which obviously terrible. But then, you know, there were various lacerations. I won't get too graphic, but there was various cuts made to her body and things like that. But they were all done after death. So this wasn't about torturing this woman when she was alive. This was about using her body as a canvas, effectively, like presenting her as a piece of art. And this is the theory. You know, I get into this in the book. This is the theory that I find really, really convincing as to why the Black Dahlia was killed and why she was posed and left in the way that she was. Thank you, Samia, for saying you enjoyed the pitch. I appreciate that, and I'm happy, guys, for more questions. So the Black Dahlia is super, super fascinating. And then the other thing that the other aspect of the book that I was really keen to write about was the dark web, because the dark web is super fascinating. And unfortunately, the reason I started to get interested in it was that I lost my driver's license right near my house. And, you know, I had put it in my pocket, gone to the mailbox and the post office to pick up a package. And then when I got home, the driver's license wasn't there. So the next morning, my author website, the back end, was flooded with visits from Russia, Ukraine, and China. And I realized that someone had taken my driver's license information and put that information for sale on the dark web. And these hackers were coming and they were looking for more information, like my phone number or my email address, or whatever they could find, because the more personal information you have on a given individual, the more you can sell that information for people who want to use it for nefarious purposes. So that was how I first got interested in learning more about the dark web. Sharon has asked what I like to read. What a wonderful question there, Sharon. Thank you. Obviously I love to read crime books, and I always have. I mentioned some of my favorite authors at the top: Candace Fox, Tana French, J.P. Pomeroy. I loved Lynn Yowert's The Silent Listener. Really, really loved that. I loved My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyakhan Braithwaite. That's the crime, and yeah, I kind of tend towards dark crime. One of my favorite books is The Silence of the Lambs. I do really love that book, and I know it's got some issues in terms of representation, but in terms of the storytelling, I really, really love that book. I also read sort of literary works. So I like contemporary literature. I like contemporary Australian literature. So for example, Yumna Kassab's Australiana. I co-host a podcast with author James Mackenzie Watson. Oh, his book, Denizen, one of my absolute favorite books of all time. Not just because we're friends, but because I think the book is brilliant. If you like dark, Denizen is a book for you. Oh my gosh, highly recommend it. So he and I interview a lot of contemporary Australian authors about creativity, writing, and health, because he and I both have health issues. Thank you, Julie. Yes, Denizen is incredible, right? Thank you. But you gotta like dark, I think. I think some people get turned off because it is quite dark. But dark with a purpose, like dark not just for darkness' sake, but dark for a real reason. And then I love memoir, and I also wrote a memoir, so you can see like my writing kind of reflects what I love to read. And so I really, really love memoir. When I was young, one of my favorite books was A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius by Dave Eggers. I just thought that was brilliant. I think that was the first book where I was just absolutely captivated by the voice. Like the voice of that book was so powerful. So yeah, those are my three sort of: crime, literature, and contemporary literature, and memoir. And I that's what I love to read. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, so I don't know if people listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I really love them. Um, so what else do I want to tell you about dark mode? Oh yeah, I wanted to talk to you about the plants in dark mode, because the plants are one of the research aspects that I had the most fun with, and that I think, I wanted something that was really visual, that was really captivating, that when you thought about dark mode, it would make it stand out from other crime books, because I read a lot of crime books and lots of them are great, but lots of them also kind of sort of feel the same. And I was like, okay, how do I make this book stand out and feel different? Um, oh, thank you for that recommendation, Samia. I appreciate it. I'll make a note of that. So I want to make it feel different. Uh, from other crime books. So I use the plants to hopefully achieve that. So you can see on the cover, there's 3 different plants. This one in the middle is a voodoo lily. This one right there. This is a voodoo lily. And a voodoo lily is a type of corpse flower. And that means that when it blossoms, it gives off the smell of rotting meat, which is not for any nefarious reason, but because it attracts carrion flies, and carrion flies pollinate the plant. So it's not even a carnivorous plant. It's just those are the flies that pollinate it. So voodoo lilies were something I discovered in corpse flowers, and I was just like, oh man, this is so fascinating. And then of course these are dahlias. For the Black Dahlia, the dahlias don't actually come in black. The closest they get is this dark purple, and the other flower on the cover, ooh, this is really hard to angle, is hiding in the background, but it's there it is. See it there, hiding there? That's a black bat flower, and I just included those because I think they're really creepy looking. A few other plants that are mentioned in the book are the monkey orchid. So monkey orchids, if you Google them, they're amazing. They have a little monkey face. Like each of the blossoms has this like adorable little monkey face, and that's just how they grow. And there's 28,000 varieties of orchids in the world. So there are a lot of orchids. But I wanted to put in the book. The main character Reagan, she has this monkey orchid that she's grown and she loves it, but it's her plant, but she decides that she needs to sell it because she's just not making enough money at her business. So I wanted to put in how much she would charge for this plant, because I was like, I don't know how much a monkey orchid would cost. So I called up a florist in Sydney who advertised on their website that they specialize in orchids, and I said, hi, I'm a writer, and I explained my question. And I was like, yeah, so I wonder how much a monkey orchid would cost. And this woman's like, is this a prank? And I was like, no, it's not a prank. Like you can Google it. It's a real plant. So she Googled it, and then she started laughing. She's like, oh, it is a real plant. But I was like, okay, fair enough. 28,000 varieties of orchids. You can't know them all. But you should Google the monkey orchid because it's super cute. And then another one I put in, I know fungi are not plants. I know fungi are their own kingdom, but I did want to just mention this one fungi because it's so interesting. There's a type of fungus that's been discovered in Chernobyl that instead of growing towards the sun and getting its nutrients from the sun, it actually grows towards radiation and gets its nutrients from radiation. And I just found that so interesting. And I don't know if it evolved there specifically because of all the radiation present, but I just thought, oh, I've got to include that because it's so interesting. So there's all kinds of plants in the book I could talk about. Maybe I'll talk about more plants, but we've got some questions. So Wendy asks, do you have another book on the go at this time? Yes, I do. I'm under contract for my next psychological thriller, which I'm super excited about. And that will be out in 2025. So it's under works. And it'll have the same tone, the same vibe as Dark Mode. Like it's gonna have the same feel, different characters, different setting, but some connections with this story. So like it's not a sequel, but if you've read Dark Mode, there'll be a few characters that you'll notice come back. And Julie asks, what's your most recommended audio? I love audio, but sometimes the narrator misses the mark. Yes, I completely agree. And this makes it difficult to enjoy the story. It's so true. Yeah, super depends on the narrator, and that's why I really like to I like to get audiobooks from the library because then you can try it out and there's no kind of risks. Um, there's no kind of risks if the narrator doesn't turn out to be good. So my absolute favorite crime series, everyone, is John Sanford's Prey series. He's an American author, and they're police procedurals. And I think you need to start listening, like not necessarily from the beginning, because they're all standalone. Like you don't need to listen to the whole series. But I think the ones in the middle are just the best quality. So there's like 32 books in this, and I don't usually listen to series or read series. Like this is the only series in my life, but I have been following this series for 20 years, and it's so close to my heart. But the books in the middle are really, really the best. So like there's a book called Mortal Prey. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it so much. Certain Prey and Mortal Prey, those two. And the narrator is fantastic. He's got this kind of gruff voice, and I just I love the books, and then I love the narrator called Richard Ferrone. So John Sanford's Prey series, he's got another series, I'm not as interested in it, but his Prey series with Richard Ferrone, Prey, Prey, of course. And well, see if I can. Oh, I love David Sedaris as a narrator. Brilliant. He's super funny. He's an American humorist, super, super funny. And just, you can read his books on paper, but I just think because he reads his own audiobooks and he does the voice, he's so brilliant. And Samia, thank you for asking any more teasers. I will give you one more teaser for the next book. And I'm glad you're a David Sedaris fan too, Samia. I will give you one more teaser for the next book, which is that it is set in Winnipeg in a -40 winter. So I'm from Winnipeg, Canada. And if anybody's read my memoir, How to Be Australian, you'll know that it opens on a -40 day in Winnipeg, which is when I made the decision that I would leave Winnipeg and never live there again. But I've decided to set my next book in a -40 winter because I think Winnipeg is such a fascinating, it's a small city, but it's just got a weird history. Like it's just a strange, strange little city. And to illustrate that point, I will tell you one thing about it, which is that in February 1942, Winnipeg staged a full-scale Nazi invasion of itself. And I won't say why, I won't say anything more. You'll have to read the book to find out. But that book is not out for a while. The book that is out right now is Dark Mode. And one more thing I wanted to say about Dark Mode. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to me talk about Dark Mode. One more thing I wanted to say about Dark Mode is that I really want to explore female friendship in this book. So there's a little bit of a romance arc, but really at the core of this book are two women, and that's Reagan Carson, the main character, and the other person is her best friend, Min Lee Chase, who is a Korean-Australian woman and a true crime author. So she was a crime reporter, and now she's working as a true crime author. Her first book came out to great success. And the thing about Reagan and Min is that they both met when they were living in South Korea in this little village where they were the only two really fluent English speakers, and they both happened to be from Sydney. So obviously they had lots in common in their life. And so they were really, really close. Like, when you're in a different context and you spend so much time with someone and your whole life kind of revolves around them and all your experiences are shared. So they were really close. And then they both moved back to Sydney sort of at separate times. And obviously they're living completely different lives now, like Min has gone on to get married and have little kids, and Reagan, was struggling with her business, and she can't afford to hire someone to work weekends. So she works every weekend. So they're at very different places in their lives, and that's putting a lot of strain on their friendship. And then obviously the events in Dark Mode put even more strain on their friendship. And I really wanted to explore a friendship that had a very solid base, but that also had, the kind of difficulties that I think most of us face as adults. So thank you so much. Sally, thank you. I'm so glad you're looking forward to reading the book. Wendy, thank you for thank you for saying I have such enthusiasm. I really do love crime books, and it's such an honor to have written one that seems to be connecting with fellow crime fiction fans. Beck, thank you so much. I'm sorry to keep you waiting so long for the next one. I wish I could have it out next month. Jeanette, thank you for joining the talk tonight and sharing Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the book. If you've read the book already, thank you so much. And if you haven't read it yet, and you are a crime fiction fan, I really, really hope I hope it grabs you. I hope it is one of those books that just propels you through to the end that you just can't put down. That you're like, oh, I have to stay up late and read this, even though I have to get up early for work the next morning. And yeah, that's oh, and Belinda, you're selling the book. Thank you so much. I am just I was sick for so long. I spent so long sick in bed, and I wasn't able to do, like I said, like there were days where I was so sick I could not even listen to a podcast. I would just lie there and stare at the ceiling. So to be able to be here speaking to you tonight, um, and to know that the book is connecting with readers just means so much to me. So thank you, everyone. And Samia, yes, I hopefully will see you in Canberra. I would love to do an event there. But in the meantime, thanks for joining me online this evening. Have a lovely night, everyone.